Welcome back into the Bangtan Universe wormhole. Today's topic is Seven Fates Chakho, a webtoon produced by Hybe and featuring characters based on the BTS members. Chakho has become pretty important in the last few months for two reasons. First, Hybe is now collecting the individual webtoon episodes into volumes and selling them. So if you're into collecting or if you just want to read this webtoon, now's the time to buy. And second, when the first trailer for Youth dropped, we saw that the character names used in Chakho were being reused as the names of the characters in Youth. This is particularly weird because some of Team Chakho's names don't even work in Korean. There's no letter C for sane, and there isn't even a sound for the Z in Zaya. So these names call attention to themselves, and just maybe that means they're hinting that Chakho and the BU are connected on some level. This video will show that Chakho and the BU are connected on many levels. Now, we're not making actual predictions here, we're just asking what if. But we think our evidence is pretty strong, and if Chakho is connected to the BU, then we can use Chakho to learn surprising new facts about the BU characters, and we'll know what the cat really is. Follow us for an especially deep dive into the wormhole, but beware, this video spoils the identity and nature of Chakho's chief villain, the reason Team Chakho was fated to come together, and details about the final battle and its aftermath. However, we won't spoil other aspects of the 52-episode series. We want you to still be able to enjoy reading it. Now, one last thing before we dive in. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell so you won't miss out on our newest content. Now let's get started. Seven Fates Chakho is an urban fantasy story set in a futuristic city called Shinshi. Once a year, giant cat-like creatures escape their prison in the realm of shadows to kill humans in Shinshi. Then these creatures, which are called Bohm, have to return to their prison. And guess what? The portal locking them in that prison looks just like the wormholes we see in so much other BTS content. Chakho begins with Zaya, the character based on Jungkook, being tricked into opening the portal permanently, allowing the Bohm to rampage through the city for as long as they please. The 7 characters based on BTS come together in a team to kill the Bohm and save the city. But the real villain of this story is someone else entirely. It's a corporate CEO named Hwanung, who seems human but really isn't. He's actually an ancient monster far more powerful than the Bohm, and he has his own agenda for Shinshi. You won't be surprised to learn that Team Chakho defeats him in the end, but you might be surprised to learn that the members of Team Chakho are fated to be together across multiple reincarnations. The publicity campaign for Chakho began on December 31st, 2021, with a teaser that showed each BTS member being drawn into another world through a mysterious green portal. That's right, more portals. And if that makes you go, wait till you hear about the other pre-release materials. They're just bursting with BU references. In fact, there are so many references that we can't even include them all in this video. We'll just have to hit the highlights. But if you want to dig into the material and see everything we saw, or maybe even more, we've curated a Chakho playlist containing all the pre-release material in chronological order. Check it out and let us know what you think by dropping a comment below this video. Now let's begin with the official teaser, focusing on Jin's segment in particular. His suit is almost identical to the one he wore at the end of the highlight reel, and the way the hallway tilts makes it look like he's falling into holes within holes. This reminds us of the scene in one of the supplementary notes. When Jungkook was a kid, he almost fell into a sinkhole that seemed to have a hole within the hole, and that hole seemed to be a portal to another world. Jin's segment also reminds us of a famous scene from the movie Inception, a movie that was about dreams within dreams. And of course, Taeyoung's dreams in the BU are actually visions which help him and the team to save Jin's soul. Before we move on to a new source of evidence, let's take a quick look at Jimin's scene. This cell phone image shows him in cartoon form falling into what seems to be the world of Chakho. Notice how closely this fall matches Jimin's falls in the Serendipity MV and the Magic Shop VCR. These two videos aren't formal BU canon, but they're considered to be good sources of BU material, and Jimin's scene here hints that Chakho might be a source of canon like the others. Now let's check out a longer video called CCTV Live, which was actually presented to us live, as if it was real CCTV footage. Remember the hour-long video of melting butter that BTS gave us before they released the single Butter? And remember how carefully some of us studied it because we were sure it held hidden clues? Well, a lot of us studied the CCTV footage just as carefully when it came out, and it did give us plenty of clues. Here are just a few of the best. First, notice the Polaroid hanging from Tae's rearview mirror, showing the 7 members in silhouette. In the highlight reel, Seokjin had a similar Polaroid of the group hanging from his rearview mirror, although that photo showed them at the beach. Tae's picture doesn't have a background at all, but if you look closely at the silhouettes, you'll recognize them from one of the proof photo shoots. And since that photo shoot wasn't released until 6 months later, Chakho is at the very least hiding spoilers about that. Now let's take another look at Jimin's scene, this time focusing on his room. It contains both a chess game and individual chess pieces. And as we noted, chessboards are a recurring theme in the BU. They may be references to the games the cat plays against our heroes and the strategies it uses to try to defeat them. Finally, notice the motes of light left behind each time a member vanishes. They look a lot like the motes in Stay Gold, which led the members out of their solitude and reunited them. We've already predicted that in the next era, the cat will separate the friends across space and time, and that they might reconnect through light. Here, the motes appear after each member is transported out of a place where he was alone and into a place where he connects with the others. In the first and shortest official story film, we see more motes, this time trailing behind white orbs, and the members are chasing them rather than leaving them behind. Since these motes are white, they could remind us of the motes in the Lights video, and that MV tells the same story of the members being separated and reuniting. Here we have voiceovers in addition to the visuals, and each member's scenes reference themes from their music and the BU. For instance, Jimin mentions 2 songs, Lost and Road/Path. In case you don't know, Road/Path, the word doesn't translate well into English, is a hidden track on BTS's debut album, and the concept of BTS's particular path through life shows up time after time in their material, including in the BU. Moving on, the road Suga walks down reminds us of the one in First Love, and RM mentions fate, which is not only a key concept of the BU, but also a key concept of Chakho. By the way, the webtoon's full title is 7 Fates Chakho. We get even more nods to the BU in the Stay Alive MV. For instance, here's a hidden butterfly. Here's an object that looks a lot like the microcosmos orb from the 2019 MMA. And just for good measure, we have drones hovering around Suga again, just like they did in Dope. Now let's take a look at the lyrics of Chakho's OST, Stay Alive. Notice this line in the chorus, "Even if my feet bleed, I'll be by your side." That's a reference to these lyrics from the classic HYYH song Run. Let me run more, because though my feet are covered in cuts and bruises, I would be smiling whenever I see your face. Actually, running on no matter how much it hurts is a major theme of many BTS songs, and it's a major theme of their history as a group. The last bit of pre-release material we'll look at, before moving on to the webtoon itself, are the interviews. Each BTS member was asked the same 2 questions. What is fate to you? And what do the members mean to you? And once again, each member answered with references to the BU. For instance, RM gave a not quite verbatim callback to the line, "We can laugh when we're together," and Jimin referenced Lost and Road Path again, using almost the same words as he did in the official story film. Meanwhile, V took things a step farther when he said the members recognized each other's signals. This is a sly shout out to the K-drama Signal, which we've talked about before. It's the secret inspiration for BU content, which we haven't seen discussed by any other BU theorists. And just to make sure we caught his reference, Tae copied Jimin by mentioning Signal again in his part of the official story film. And now it's time finally to study Chakho itself. We'll start with the least important BU references and work our way up to the big reveals about the hero's 7 fates, the true nature of Chakho's villain, and how that villain fits what we know of the BU's cat. To begin, Suga's character, Sane, has green hair like his BU counterpart in the HYYH era. Next, here's a reference to a BU classic, a wormhole. This one in Chakho opens onto the realm of shadows where the Balm live. As we've noted before, the member most often associated with wormholes is Jungkook, and in Chakho, it's Jungkook's character, Zaya, who gets tricked into opening this wormhole. And speaking of the realm of shadows where the Balm live, it contains a floating island that might remind you of Film Out. But in the interest of avoiding spoilers, we won't say anything more about that. Moving on, let's take a look at this sign for a tofu restaurant. It's drawn in a completely different style from the rest of the webtoon, which automatically draws our attention to it. And we should pay attention to it, because tofu has a special, though hidden, place in the BU. The first book of HYYH, The Notes, ends with a collage of pictures referencing important events in the characters' lives. One of these pictures is a lost dog flyer posted by Taeyoung. His dog's name is Dubu, and Dubu is referenced at least twice more in the BU, once in a supplementary note and once in the graphic lyrics. Both times the dog has run away and Taeyoung is trying to find him. And actually, Dubu might be the same dog who runs away from Taeyoung's prison in the MV for Stigma. We wouldn't be surprised if Dubu shows up another time based on all of this. And the word Dubu itself is actually associated with prisons. Dubu is the Korean word for tofu. And in Korea, prisoners are given tofu upon their release to signify a fresh start in life. Now think about how Stay Gold showed the members being released from what's basically solitary confinement, and our theory that in the next era of the BU, the cat will imprison them in different parts of space and time, and they'll have to escape that trap. It all comes together, doesn't it? Moving on, the green gold motes from Stay Gold show up several times in the webtoon, particularly in episode 36, when all 7 members of Chakho finally come together. That night, they share a vision of ancient Shinshi, and through this vision, they learn about their shared destiny. It's a long story, so we'll just give you the short version with as few spoilers as possible. These 7 men are all reincarnations of one hero from ancient Shinshi. His name was Tabe, and he was half Balm, half human, just like Jungkook's character. Also just like Jungkook's character, Tabe was tricked into unleashing a monster upon his city. But while Zaya unleashed the Balm, Tabe unleashed the monster that became the villain currently threatening Shinshi. I'll talk more about him in a minute, but first we need to think about how strange it is that Tabe's single soul was reincarnated into 7 souls, and how this fits into the BU. The answer comes from a VCR that was part of the Wings tour, a VCR that was full of canon content. YouTube won't let us post these VCRs, so instead I'm giving you a transcript of the poem. Almost every line is a reference to some part of the BU, mostly the Wings era, so we'll just point out the lines that connect to Chakho. If you'd like to track all the other references, including one to Bob Dylan of all people, just pause the video and read for yourself. And if you do that, leave a comment below so everyone can enjoy what you found. So here's the first bit. The boy with not 1 but 7 hearts, 7 beats and 1 stride forward, altered perspective and 1 is 7. And then there's this bit. Now the 7 boys are on the road, 7 but 1, 7 boys with 1 heart, 1 boy with 7 hearts, 1 and 7, reflections of each other. And now at last it's time to address the biggest question of this video. What is the creature disguised as the corporate CEO of Wanhoo, and how does the creature really relate to the cat? The first time we see this thing in its true form is during the Chakho members' shared vision. There it's a small, harmless-looking monster that Tabe keeps as a pet. He carries it on his shoulder and calls it Snowflake. But over time, Snowflake grows bigger and smarter, and eventually it betrays Tabei. It takes on Tabei's form and leads the citizens of ancient Shinshi into battle. In the end, Snowflake kills Tabei, Shinshi is destroyed, and Snowflake goes into hiding until he reappears in modern Shinshi with a more sophisticated plan. So, this creature is a shapeshifter who, based on attempts by other characters to defeat him, might be impossible to kill. If you know much about Korean mythology, you might already guess what he is, but if you don't know what he is, Hwanung himself tells us. He is a bulgasal. In Korean mythology, the name bulgasal is usually interpreted as impossible to kill. The creature is also called a bulgasali, although that word means starfish. But a starfish can regenerate lost limbs, making it pretty hard to kill. During Snowflake's fight with Chakho, it regenerates almost its whole body. By the way, Suga actually references bulgasali in Cipher 3 when he raps, "I'm impossible to kill, growing up on your jealousy." So, now that we know the name and nature of Chakho's monster, let's see if we can connect it to the BU's cat. We'll start by comparing this image of Snowflake as Tabei's pet with this image of Snowflake being generated by magic. Now let's take a quick detour into TXT's universe. We don't know enough to say much about that group, but we do know that most people believe TXT's cat is the same entity as the BU's cat. So with that in mind, we'll offer up a couple of images of the cat in TXT's MV, The Doom's Night. Here's one where it has the same outline as the creature on Tabei's shoulder, and here's one where it's actually crouching on Yeonjun's shoulder. So, does The Doom's Night provide more evidence that the cat in the BU is a bulgasal? Maybe, maybe not, but we have plenty of other evidence. One characteristic of the bulgasal is that it's a shapeshifter. That's why in the webtoon, Snowflake is able to impersonate Tabei and to create a human identity as Hwanung. In fact, the bulgasal even poses as Zeha in a third scene. And don't forget that the cat in the BU shapeshifts into Seokjin's truck and runs over Jungkook. Now let's talk about the thing's eyes. The BU's cat has one blue eye and one green eye, and the bulgasal's eyes are both red. However, they're still mismatched. See? But we've saved our most important evidence for last. The Bangtan Universe game trailer offers a short version of the Notes 2 story, and this scene shows Seokjin's second bargain with the cat, the bargain that cost him his positive emotions and memories of his friends. Now think back to this scene, and I need you. The six-petaled lily represents his 6 friends. The lily is superimposed on his heart because he loves them so much. But in the Japanese video for Blood, Sweat, and Tears, the lily has been replaced by a wormhole because at this point in Seokjin's journey, things are going so badly that he thinks he might never be able to save his friends, no matter how many times he loops back to his starting point. And in case you still aren't convinced that the wormhole relates to time travel, here's another shot from the same video with Seokjin staring down into it. The important point is that the wormhole has replaced the lily in Seokjin's heart. It's what's most important to him right now. And now look what's most important in his second meeting with the cat. A starfish is in the center of his heart. It's not a repetition of the lily because the lily has 6 petals and this particular starfish has 5 limbs. It's definitely meant to be something different, and it's definitely meant to be over his heart. We've already told you that the bulgasal is sometimes called a starfish, and if you look closely, the moment after the starfish appears over Seokjin's heart, his emotions and memories concerning his friends begin to disappear. The cat stole them from his heart, and now it's replaced them with the symbol of the bulgasal. Is this really just coincidence? Now, we're not saying everything in the Chakho webtoon is 100% BU canon, but considering all the evidence, it does seem like Chakho is giving us clues about the BU. Let's go over them in order from the most likely to the least likely. First, if Chakho contains canon, then the cat is almost certainly a bulgasal. Second, the heroes of the BU are probably the current incarnations of either 1 or 7 ancient heroes, not necessarily Tabei, who have reincarnated many times and will continue to reincarnate many more times. And in fact, the opening verse of DNA supports this theory very well. I recognized you at first sight, as if we were calling each other. The DNA in my blood vessels tell me that it's you I've been looking for. Our meeting is a mathematical formula, religious precept, and providence of the universe. The evidence of destiny given to me. You're the source of my dream. Take it, take it. My hand stretched out to you is a destined fate. If our 7 heroes really are destined to reincarnate and join forces time after time, maybe it's so that they can take on the cat/Bugasa. They might even be the only ones capable of doing it. If so, that explains why the cat tried so hard to tear the group apart and drive each of them into despair. All these ideas seem pretty grounded to us, pretty solid, assuming Chakho really does connect to the BU. But we aren't certain about any of this, and now is the time to throw out some less grounded, less solid ideas. One or more of these would be true if Chakho has a lot of BU connections. First, since the webtoon features many kinds of traditional Korean creatures besides the Bugasa, some of them could appear again in the next era of the BU. Next, since J-Hope's character in Chakho gains some pretty extraordinary powers, and since he barely has a chance to try them out, that could mean Hosek's character in the BU will gain some new power. It would have to be something that fits into the BU rather than the cyberpunk meets mythology world of Chakho, but it could have a hint of the Chakho world about it. For instance, Hosek might develop a mystical ability that helps him track his missing friends. Jimin might gain a new ability too, since his character in Chakho isn't even human at the beginning of the story. He's actually a god, the one guarding the portal to the realm of shadows. So maybe the BU's Jimin will gain a power that allows him to guard or protect the others. Okay, yes, these ideas are far-fetched, but you have to admit that Hosek and Jimin's characters in the BU haven't been very proactive yet, and that's only natural considering their storylines. But in Notes 2, they faced their fears and conquered their traumas, so in the next era they'll be just as strong as the others. Chakho might signal their readiness to become heroes. But tell us what you think. How likely are these theories? Do you have any of your own to add? Take a look at our Chakho playlist and tell us what you see there. We've left plenty of surprises for you to find on your own. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to like our channel and subscribe. That way you won't miss out on our future predictions, deep dives, and news of future BTS projects. Thanks, and Appa Bangpo.